everybody, welcome back to Just One More Row, a little crafting vlog we got going on here. And today I wanted to show off two things. One of the easier wins sweaters, and one of the last podcast things that I've done. I said I really needed some easy wins because, frankly, my brain was burnt out. I'm learning a whole bunch of new skills. And I just wanted something that didn't require massive amounts of brain power in order to make happen. Henceforth, one of the things I made was the sweater I'm wearing right now. This is the Inishmore sweater. And it is from out of this Columbia Minerva magazine. And that is going to be book 763. We're going to go through. This is the size 40 chest. So that should tell you about how big I am. And it is very comfortable. It was very easy to knit up. It did take a little bit of concentration for all of the cables, but once you figured, you could memorize them very easily. There's really only 3, and they don't change. Now there's little nubbies on here. Just kind of keep that one in mind. The collar here is folded over. It is a set-in sleeve. This particular one I made with, this is Leonardo from Ice Yarns. And it is 66% merino wool, 34% cotton, organic cotton. And it is 190 meters per 50 grams. So this is what I've used. And it worked out pretty well. I will say if you're going to use the Leonardo, when you knit it up, first off, because the cotton, it has like no stretch. This is a zero chill yarn. And that it will gain a halo once you have washed it. So if you're knitting it up, like, don't freak out yet if you don't get the fluff and the light halo that you can kind of see on mine. It's not super huge. But that will come after you've washed it. But this also does come with a cardigan option. I did actually really consider making, and then I looked at the number of cardigans that I have, and I was like, do I need another cardigan? Need is a very strong word, but then I look at the number of sweaters that I have that is possibly getting into an embarrassingly large pile. And I realized, you know what? Do I need another sweater? Yes. This is my hobby. This is what I do. This is what I love. And so... Yes, I in fact need another one. This thing is super comfortable and the designs they're good and the instructions are good. Like I said, I didn't find any math errors, which for a vintage pattern is kind of a big deal. Anyway, I'd like to take you through parts of this magazine to show you what's out there or what's in here and hopefully be able to point out, check out some of these older magazines for men's sweater patterns. You can find them used bookstores, thrift stores. You can go online and you can purchase them as well, whether that's the original one or you can also get digital copies. Also, depending on where they're at in their copyright, you may be able to just download them for free. Do not steal. Don't go stealing other people's designs. But double check and see what the copyright is and you may be able to do that. So, come on over the table and let's see what's up. This is Hand Knits for Men by Columbia Minerva and it is book 763. Pretty neat. Also has a price tag of $1.50 with a neat thing for a complete collection of classics. Here are 2 of the ones on the front. So this one here is incredibly contemporary. It's got, sorry about the reflection on there. It's got some nice cables that run up the front, a turtleneck, and turtlenecks are pretty optional. Like if you wanted to make this a crew neck, you just don't make the collar as long. That's pretty neat, but this particular style would not look out of place today, I don't think. This one here for a nice chunkier knit, probably not, but it's the same basic thing. It's going to have a folded over collar, set-in sleeves. These are also set-in sleeves. And these are thicker than what I normally do. But again, I don't think they would look out of place today. Alrighty. So I'm going to try to skip over a bunch of the actual instructions. One, because I don't know about copyright on those, but two, they're also kind of boring to look at. So, starting here, this is the one that I made. It's the Inishmore Pullover and the Inishmore cardigan. These are both cabled. They have little nubbies on them, which is what you can see right here. And those are 3-dimensional, just as an FYI. They're pretty easy to put together. They do have a folded over collar. Again, I don't think these would look super weird, especially this pullover, the one that I'm wearing. This could easily, you would not look odd in this today. Not a lot of people wear cardigans, I don't think, anymore. So maybe this one, but I don't know, I wear them. All right, what's our next one? Okay, so here we have two. So here we have two more. Again, sorry about the glare. There's the Fairfield Pullover and the Winfield Pullover. These are cabled. Again, they don't look super difficult. These are repeating cable patterns. This one here just has a front twist and the next sort of back twist, and then it's like pseudo ribbing, I guess. That run up here is just a knit purl pattern. And that's literally it. Like, it's like the pseudo ribbing, then cables, then pseudo ribbing all the way across, and then on top of that it's just cables, pseudo ribbing, cables, so it alternates. This again would not be super difficult. This is kind of, I would call this advanced beginner patterns, simply because this is going to repeat, and it doesn't take a whole lot of different stitch patterns in order to make this happen. You just need to be able to count. So the next one over that we have here, again, it's the same thing. This is a very simple cable pattern and what looks like garter stitch here. So this would be very, very easy to make, I think. And, oh, that looks like it actually is a saddle shoulder. So again, not super difficult to make. I would call that an advanced beginner pattern. Okay. Now here we have two others. Again, this is a cardigan, but it involves a zipper, which is pretty neat, and pockets. So that one, and this looks like a variation on a moss stitch is what it's made in here, with what appears to be a crocheted edge. So if you have an appropriately sized crochet hook, this should not be hard to put on. This pattern doesn't look super difficult. Like I said, it looks like a variation of a moss stitch, and it does have set-in sleeves. Not a whole lot in terms of cuff for ribbing. And so we have this is the Lexington jacket. And here we have the Concord pullover. This one here actually does appear to be a fairly basic. Now, when I say basic or classic, like, that's not meant as saying, oh, well, it's basic, so it's less than something that is more ornate. What I mean is that this is a good base for you to then be able to take this in any direction that you'd like. It's a fairly straightforward V-neck. This is done in stripes, so if you just want to follow the stripe pattern, this is an easy way to break up your stash pile. If it's all the same weight, just go ahead and go through and do each of these stripes, either the large ones or the small ones, in a different color. Again, not a whole lot as far as ribbing, although this does have a folded over hem. Those are always really nice finishing detail. So if you wanted to learn how to do some of that stuff, Concord pullover might be a great thing to do, but good basic. Now here are some that people might think of as more classic in terms of like a golf or a tennis pullover. So we have a pullover and a vest. So we have a Berkeley, this is the Hunter pullover over here, and this is the Berkeley sleeveless pullover. Now you'll notice that these are in the same color palette, but colors you can change up. That's not an issue at all. It does have a little bit of color change, and you are seeing here that you've got some cables, V-neck. So this is again a good base for a vest. And over here, kind of the same thing, although this has a lot more cabling to it, which I find to be a little bit interesting. This does appear to have cabling up the arms. This looks like a set-in sleeve. Obviously this one over here is sleeveless, but looks like a set-in sleeve. Nice tall V-neck. So this is kind of an interesting thing. You could make your V-neck shorter if you wanted to, simply by knitting less rows. Doesn't look like anything else there is folded over. All of these seem to be sizes 40, 42, 44, and 46 inches for the bust circumference, so chest. Take a measuring tape and measure underneath your arms, around your chest, and lay your measuring tape up against the skin, but don't pull tight. Like, you don't want it to pull into your skin, you want it to lay next to it, and that'll give you your bust measurement. So this tells you 40, 42. And those, I believe, are the finished sizes. So just kind of keep that in mind. So this would be a finished bust 40, not something for a bust size 40 with 4 extra inches of ease. That is a subtle yet very important difference. Let's see. Okay. Now we're getting over here into some color. If you wanted some chunkier color, this is a boat neck. So pretty straightforward. I am personally not a huge fan of these necklines, but I have fairly square shoulders. So this is basically, you know, going to choke me. So I'm not a huge fan of this particular necklines. But in like the 50s and coming into the 60s, these were incredibly popular. You'll find them all over the place. This is set in sleeves and looks, now these are also going to be done in piecework. So this is not done in the round, and you're probably not going to find steeks. Steeks really didn't come back in until like the 70s, I want to say. So a lot of your older vintage material, you will not be steeking, you'll be working in piecework. So you're going to have to learn how to knit flat or know how to add in your own steeks. I don't use steeks at all, so I am not the person to ask on that. But this here has some pretty simple, looks like a worsted weight pattern. These are done with color work because you can see there are 3 colors in a row, so not Fair Isle. And this looks like the Stowe pullover. This one here appears to be the Conway pullover. Again, pretty simple. This looks like a raglan sleeve, as you can see here, with a turtleneck. Again, you can shorten this neck or lengthen it just by knitting more or fewer rows. And this literally just looks like 2x2 ribbing. Okay. Now we have these two here. So this looks like it's called the Whitney pullover. It's got a turtleneck. Now this has a drop shoulder to it. Again, keep in mind, this is going to be done in piecework. And it's a chunkier pattern. I don't know how I feel about this. Like, diamond lined, diamond pseudo fish looking thing. You can easily see how this can be traded out. So you would, if you wanted to change this design, you figure out what the minimum size is for this, what each repeat of this is, and then you would simply substitute in a pattern that is the same size. And it will come out with the same spacing. So this one here does not have a folded over hem, it looks like. Long sleeve, drop shoulder, turtleneck. Probably going to be a little bit of shoulder shaping. A number of these have a bit of shoulder shaping. Now this one over here is actually interesting, mostly because there's this very square neckline, and it is what appears to be a raglan. Now I don't know if this one's going to be top down. Probably not. I'm actually willing to bet that these pieces will work separately and then seamed. Is what I'd put my money on. But you don't see anything folded over. The body of this is going to be worked probably flat. And the reason that I say that is because you can see, if you look very closely, you can see that the knitter for this does tend to row out just a tiny bit. I do the same thing, so it's not a criticism, it's just a statement showing this was knitted by an actual person. This does appear to be actually Fair Isle, which is kind of nice. So you will only have 2 colors per row, and the distance between any of the 2 colors will be no more than 7 stitches. So that is what this appears to be. I think that you could play around a lot with some of these colors if you wanted to. There's a lot of option there, but I do like this kind of square neckline because it's a little bit wider and it's different. Okay. Ah, the land of cardigans. Here we are. Okay. So we have the Newport jacket, which is the one down here. And this is a Hampton shirt. So here we have a button-down, very lighter weight men's shirt. So short sleeved. Does have an additional collar. Will have buttons. And does have that same folded over hem. So there's no ribbing at the bottom. This looks like it's done in a textured yarn, but there's no reason that you have to do it like that if you don't want to. Overall, look, I mean, it's one color, so fairly basic. If you're just getting into doing some vintage sewing, this may not be a bad one, just because there's not a whole lot going on here. But it does leave you with a really nice base so that you could add in color work or other items there if you wanted to. And the same thing down here with this Newport jacket. Again, folded over hem. This has a shawl collar. Interestingly enough, this is a folded over button band. So this button band, you'll basically have two strips with holes in them, and then fold it over and sew it down. It's going to make a nice, much thicker collar. And then you'd have to come into these buttonholes and then sew them shut. Trust me on this, you want to sew them shut. The Newport jacket does also include pockets. This is a good classic, and it will still allow you to do a lot with different colors. Over here. Okay. Down here we have the Sequoia cardigan and what looks like the Champion pullover. I'm a sucker for cardigans. This one, both of these do involve zippers. So this one has a longer zipper down the front. Appears to be a folded over hem again. Ooh, no, that might actually be ribbing. You can't really tell in this picture. This could be a lot of fun to do different variegated yarns in here and see how they work out. What looks to be a folded over collar here. I don't see any pockets, but you could very easily, just as easily, leave out this particular color work or add more in. Over here, the the Champion pullover. So this one here is kind of interesting. It's got some ribbing down here at the bottom. It has a nice patch pocket with a flap on top. It has this, it's not I-cord running across the front, and it does have a top yoke with a zipper in it. And it does look like a turtleneck. Now I don't know if the turtleneck does not appear to be sewn down, but I don't know if that flips over or not. I just thought that one was neat because it doesn't look like other pullovers. I'm willing to bet that wouldn't be super hard to make. I might put that on my list of things to make next. Alrighty. Oh, hello. This here is going to be the Derby pullover. It's kind of like a little polo shirt. Doesn't appear to have anything folded over, so this just looks like it's plain ribbing. The collar does not appear to be folded over. Although it does kind of follow this curve. So it doesn't look like this button band was knitted up with the rest of the shirt. The shirt was knitted and then the button band and collar were added on as one, is what it appears to be. This does have set-in sleeves. Now, as to these stripes, you kind of have two options when you're doing stripes like this. One, you could definitely do some pretty basic color work your background color, and then do a stripe, background color, stripe, background color, stripe. Or you could, for each of these stripes, do a purl stitch and then come back in with a crochet hook and then work your stripe like that. Now, I do like that it shows off what happens when you add a variegated yarn to your background. And you could, if you do these stripes separately, you could do all of these stripes in different colors for these little ones running up and down. Or you could just not put in these stripes and simply have something with a little bit of ribbing. If you do that, that will make this pattern reversible. So on the other side, this area here, this lighter background color, would be purl stitches, and then you could have one row of knit stitches that would be running up and down in stripes. And if you want to, twist those so they don't pull apart. Like you can kind of see here on mine what would end up happening. If you twist them, they stay together a little bit better. But go ahead and do a swatch for that and see if you like the way that looks. Like I said, you could easily turn this around so that you just simply have a stripe of of knit stitches running up and down. This one here is called the Ardmore cardigan. So pretty basic, classic cabled cardigan. I'm willing to bet that does have a folded over, that might be a folded over button band. I can't really tell. I prefer given the option to knit your button band on as you go. That's personal preference, not a judgment for anybody who does it separately. Just seems like an awful lot of work for no reason. Now this one here does also have set-in sleeves. This is an advanced beginner. Both of these are like advanced beginner patterns. This one's a knit purl pattern. This one, very basic cable pattern. So you can see here how you have your classics, but that you don't have to have a huge amount of technical knowledge. You don't have to be knitting for 15 years in order to make these. These ones are, like I said, I would call them advanced beginners. Simply because, especially like this one here is pretty straightforward and simple. This one here is a repeating pattern, and it's not like your cables are, it's not like an all over cable pattern. You will just need to know how to put in buttons, and I would sew along the edges of those buttons to buttonholes to just kind of neaten them up a little bit. Alrighty. So we have these that are interesting because they're kind of in pairs here. We have the caramel pullover and the Monterey cardigan. I have no idea why they're named different things. They look like they go together. This looks almost like a twin set. If this one here had short sleeves. So both are V-necked, ribbing down at the bottom, a little bit of color, and yeah, that's really straightforward. I think it's a drop shoulder simply because I don't see a shoulder seam over here, and does have some shaping along the shoulder as far as I can tell. So this I would call a more beginner pattern. If you want to do this with stripes, this would be super easy to do with stripes. If you want to do color work, that would be very easy to add in. Doing cables, you may have to do a little bit of math for that, but basic color work, this would be pretty simple. So it's a good base to start with. And over here, for the Monterey cardigan, it's the same thing. Pretty simple V-neck, what looks like a drop shoulder. It might be set in because I do see a little bit of a sleeve cap right there. But looser fit. This button band does look picked up after the fact. It's a good base. Neither of these I think would look out of place. Because I think sometimes that's the concern, is if you get into doing vintage stuff that you're going to look vintage. Like you're going to look dated. And honestly, when you go back and you look at some of these, many of them don't look dated. I have another magazine I'll show you, and you'll see in there that it doesn't necessarily look dated. Aha, we have more. Okay, so over here we have the Big Sur pullover and the Laguna pullover. It does not tell me which one they are. This one here is just a striped raglan. That looks actually super fun to make because you're going to have two contrasting colors, and then I don't know how well it shows up on camera, but there is a third one where you have some stripes down here at the waist and hips, one around the neck, and looks like one around the sleeve there. These cuffs, where the ribbing would be, so down here at the bottom, up at the sleeve, and around the neck do appear to be a folded over hem. So again, that's a really nice finishing thing. That looks really straightforward to make. That could easily be done in the round, and this I would call a beginner pattern. The hardest thing that if you did them separately, would be matching up your stripes. But if you do them all as in the round, then that would not be an issue. Over here, again, I'm not certain if this is the Big Sur or the Laguna. This has set-in sleeves. It's short sleeved. Here you can see some of the ribbing. I can't see the edge, but I'm willing to bet that's got a folded over hem to it. Here you can see it's worked in pieces because there's the seam right there. And this does look like it's got a an I-cord edging possibly along the front of this, or maybe garter stitch. Fairly straightforward. I shouldn't say basic. I will call them straightforward patterns. This has a stripe pattern that's not as super in your face. It does appear that there is some shoulder shaping. A lot of these do have some shoulder shaping, but not a lot. I look at that and keep in mind because I have very square shoulders. If there's a lot of shoulder shaping, it looks weird on me. So this is just one of the things, like if you have squarer shoulders, you just don't do as much. If you need more, make this line more extreme. That is this very simple modification that you can do to your pattern so that they fit you better. All right. Over here, we have the Tibet pullover and the Jilgo, I guess. Anyway, these are two over here. Again, this is a striped, what looks like a mock turtleneck, so probably folded over. Guys with surfboards. It was the 60s. Sorry about all that. But this is just another simple striped pullover, just like we saw earlier, but these ones just have bolder stripes to them. Set in sleeve here. If you want to make the collar longer, that would not be super hard to do. Now this one gets interesting because if you did have a color work pattern in here, just have it follow that stripe. And back here, this one looks very similar to the red and white one we just looked at. It's got, looks like set in sleeves, rolled hem, same thing except that the stripe pattern is a little bit different. And possibly your stitch counts are a little bit different. So this one looks much drapier, but if you wanted to make something drapey, go with a planter insect fiber, and that should definitely help. So work in a silk, work in a cotton, work in a linen. This isn't a linen shirt would be amazing. Like linen is absolutely amazing because it's so breathable. So here we have two more. These are the more serious grown up. This one here could be interesting. So we have, it's a two-tone, very deep V. Very, very deep V on here, which does make it interesting. So you could definitely play around with some of the colors on this. This does look like it has a folded over button band. I would be willing to put money on that, but does not have any kind of collar that I can see. And then these are some pretty straightforward, just moving your colors back and forth in tarsia. And I can tell that because there's a little, some of these are cabled over, and you can tell because you have this little thing right here, that's where the stitch is cabled over. Pretty straightforward, although this one does have a lot more personality. This one here, but even though this has more personality to it for the Valiant, I would still call this an advanced beginner because while there's some shaping, the only thing that's going to be a little bit different and more difficult than other sweaters is this line right here, and it's not super wide. Advanced beginner. Same thing over here, advanced beginner. This one has pockets involved, so you would learn how to put those in. Repeating cable pattern that runs up the front and up the arms. It's a V-neck, but there's no collar. This one does not appear to be a folded over button band, just because it's not as thick. Like the folded over ones are thicker. It's the only way I can explain it. Set in sleeves. It does have a little tiny bit of twisted stitch for like this, like half a ribbing pattern right there, but pretty straightforward. So on the back here, as far as other sweater patterns, and before we get to design your own classic ones, there are these two on the back. This is really, really, really straightforward. This is just a V-neck cardigan with a folded over hem. You can actually see it here. This collar is thicker than this, so I'm willing to bet that's a folded over button band. And they have stitched around the outside of these buttonholes. That's another indicator that it's probably folded over. This does not look like ribbing. This looks folded over. This cuff here again looks folded over. So there's just some nice little finishing details that would make your work a little bit different. And then the stripe pattern here, again, you could easily do that by doing intarsia. So just a little bit of color work back and forth, or you can come in with your crochet hook and then add them in. And it depends on what you would prefer to do. I think this one was probably added in with a crochet hook. You could also add some of these in as, say, like I-cord if you wanted to have a very textural sort of thing here. This is, again, I would call this advanced beginner, so not super difficult. The only part that's going to be slightly difficult, lots of bunny ears on this, is this part right here. Just because crocheting those in is kind of a hemorrhoid. Over here we've got a argyle-y sort of pattern. It's got the two colored diamonds back and forth. The V-neck collar does not appear to be folded over. The cuffs and the ribbing down here do not appear to be folded over, so that's pretty straightforward. And then you have ribbing for the sleeves. You could definitely change out the colors, and you could go a lot of places with this, but it doesn't look that difficult to do. This could be a very nice stash buster where you do each of these diamonds in a different little bit from your stash and just work them up, or to be able to just do like certain diamonds in light colors, certain diamonds in dark colors, or you have each of these diamonds in color set A and then the other ones in color set B, so that when you're done, yes, it's kind of scrappy, but it's also scrappy with a design to it. So you could definitely do that. This does appear, well, I mean, some people do twisted ribbing for their ribbings. I don't. This one looks like it kind of is. But again, advanced beginner. There's a little bit of shoulder shaping right there as well. So you're not seeing anything in here that is super difficult or would be beyond anyone's capabilities. Like if you've made a sweater or two, you could do these. And interestingly enough, when you look at these could be designed and sold today without anybody batting an eye in it. Definitely take a look at some of these. Now, in the back of this book, which is book 763, there's this whole section on creating your own classics. So in here they have, if I can straighten that out, some different pattern styles that you can play with. So you have here, these are just V-neck cardigans. So you have a raglan, you have like a drop shoulder, you have set-in sleeves. And then this section will actually get into how to design these. This does look like it's got the folded over button band, but it is just showing that once you know how to do these, it opens things up. A little bit further back here, you can see a cardigan and a vest. So you have, that might actually be a saddle shoulder, set-in sleeve, raglan, and then a vest, which wouldn't be super hard to make. Over here, V-necks, and these are all pullovers. But that's what's happening inside of this particular magazine. I did not see a year anywhere in here. Take a look at some of your older magazines, and if you find ones for men, those are really cool because you don't see a lot of them as compared to the ones for women or for babies. So much stuff for babies, so much stuff for women. Finding stuff for men is a little bit harder, which is why I absolutely love this magazine. Now mine is falling apart because I've used it a bit and it's older. So hopefully I'll be able to get this digitized, which if you guys come across any patterns, digitize, it will help. Just because they're falling apart. Anyway, that's what's going on with this. So thanks for sticking around till the end, and see you guys next time. Have fun, make stuff. Bye.